Well, thank you, Premier. And this emergency is now well and truly into its fourth day. Whilst the rain is starting to ease across Sydney, the emergency is far from over. Today we will see, as we will shortly hear from Jane Golding of the Bureau of Meteorology, that the weather system is now moving into the lower Hunter area throughout the course of today, and we are expecting to see significant rainfall in that area, and then by tonight and into tomorrow it will move up to the mid-north coast. So we're really asking communities today to bear with us, keep working with us. It has been a difficult 4 days. There's no gilding that lily. We're not quite through it yet. We've got major flooding heights still on a number of river systems, particularly the likes of the Georges River and right, of course, down through the Hawkesbury Nepean Valley. So we're really asking people to continue working with us through this time, and to also appreciate that, as we've said over and over again, the landscape is very saturated. Our dams are full, our river channels are also full. Our streams and tribs continue to contribute to those river systems that are already full. And as a result, if we do get a sudden downpour in a certain location, it can cause flash flooding and river rises to occur very quickly. And that's what we saw last night in the Warrenora and Liverpool areas. There were certain areas there that were already the subject of an evacuation order. They had been since Saturday. Certain people decided to return home despite those evacuation orders being in place. And then we saw that river rise very quickly yesterday, and it's caught some people unawares, and they've had to be rescued as a result. So our message really is, if there's an evacuation order in place, it really is there for a reason. It is to protect you and your family from needing to be rescued, and thereby preserving the very precious resources of the emergency services organisations. Our volunteers have been working around the clock now for days and days, and we need to continue working with them to make sure that we keep you safe and also that they are also kept safe at this time. I really want to thank all of the emergency services in particular that turned out to Warrenora and Liverpool last night. It was all hands on deck, and we had resources come from as far away as Leichhardt and Hornsby. It was a really big effort by police, by the Rural Fire Service, who sent a number of appliances to the area. The SES, of course, as the combat agency, had a number of units moved in there very quickly, and as a result, we were able to ensure that the community was notified very, very quickly of the changing circumstances, and we were able to evacuate people at very short notice, which was a really, really good result. A similar situation at Liverpool. We had river heights come up very quickly there, and combined with some flash flooding, caught a number of motorists unawares. It was fantastic to see our emergency services all working together to make sure that people were kept safe. I think it's worthy of note that 4 days into the event, we have not seen a loss of life through this emergency, nor have we seen any significant injuries. And that's a true testament to the skill, the dedication, the commitment, the tireless efforts of our emergency services organisations, and of course our volunteers, who do a magnificent job and have continued to do so, not just through this event, but for months and months and months now. But it's also testimony to the strong relationship that our emergency services have with our communities. And I really want to thank our communities right across the Sydney area for working with us over this time. We've heard this morning there are 100 evacuation orders in place, and scores of evacuation warnings covering near on 50,000 people. So we just need people to continue working with us through this time. I'd like just to move briefly on to the natural disaster declarations which have occurred late last night. Certainly working with Senator Murray Watt, we have announced 23 local government areas as areas covered by this event as natural disaster declarations because they have been so deeply impacted by this weather event so far. So those local government areas, just to let everybody know, we've got Blacktown, Blue Mountains, Camden, Canterbury Bankstown, Campbelltown, the Central Coast, Cessnock, Fairfield, Georges River, the Hawkesbury, Hornsby, Kiama, Lithgow, Liverpool, Northern Beaches, Penrith, Shell Harbour, Shoalhaven, Sutherland, the Hills, Wingecarribee, Wallandilly and Wollongong. So there's quite an extensive list there covering everywhere from Sydney Metropolitan, the Central Coast, down up through that Illawarra area. And this is obviously the first stage, a very important first stage to opening up funding and further support for individuals, families and communities as we move from the emergency response phase, which we are still very much in at the moment, but into the early stages of recovery and then into the medium and longer term recovery processes which will be required as a result of this flooding event. So for people who would like to understand a little bit more about what that means for them, I'd encourage people to reach out to Service New South Wales on 1377 88 and we will be there to provide some assistance to you. I think just finally, before I hand over to Jane Golding, I'd really like to return to an earlier point that I made, and that is around thanking our volunteers across all of our emergency services organisations. I've been saying this consistently since having the great honour and privilege of being the Minister for Emergency Services. I'm so deeply proud of all of your efforts. This is, again, the fourth day of a very long weather event, and you've had to step up hour after hour through the night, through the day, to make sure that people are safe during this time.
Tomorrow. So we do have several flood warnings still current, and a few warnings for major of note. So the Georges is back down to moderate at the moment, which is great. Most locations on the Hawkesbury Nepean, we're still seeing major flood levels. The Menangle area, which saw that major flooding over the weekend, that looks like that's now dropping down into the moderate range, but downstream of the dam we're still seeing major flood levels, and for some locations they'll keep gradually rising during the course of today. That water's going to take a bit of time to subside, and it's moving pretty quickly, so quite dangerous out on that river at the moment and for the next couple of days. We also have major flood warnings out for the Wallenberg Brook at Bulga. Is a site of particular note. Tuggerah Lakes, we're also expecting the rivers to rise in that area through the course of today, and Long Jetty reached the major threshold tonight. So that rain that fell last night through the Central Coast and yesterday, they saw around about 180 mils. That's making its way down through those river systems. And the other key river of note with major flood warnings at the moment is the Macquarie Bell. So that's west of the ranges. We've had a major warning out there for a couple of days, but Warren, the town Warren, is looking like they'll see major flood levels. I believe it's tomorrow. So in summary, that persistent rain, it's still hanging around. It's in the Hunter today, likely to move into the mid-north coast tomorrow. The floods, even if the rain has eased, will wet those areas where the rain has eased, and we're just seeing showers at the moment. It'll take a bit of time for the water to make its way out to sea, so major flood warnings current, likely to continue for the next couple of days. And I'll hand over to Commissioner York to take you through some intel from the SES. Thank you.
Thank you. So today we've heard very strong messages from the Premier and the Minister in relation to following the orders and the advice of the New South Wales SES that goes out to the community. I also want to thank the community for those who have followed that advice and made preparations and evacuated where we have put in place evacuation orders, which there are a large number of them now in force. A couple of things happened overnight, which I think we need to reflect on the need to follow that advice and those orders and warnings that the SES put out. So Warrenora, the waters rose very rapidly last night, One of the issues for us is to get in and see and make sure that the community has evacuated. So that area had been under an evacuation order for some time, but it was clear that some people had not evacuated. Now, these levels that we saw overnight were equal to around the 1988 flood levels in that area on the Warrenora, and I know that some people might have moved into the area. Some people think that they're experienced in floods, but I think this shows the importance, when we give an evacuation order, the importance of actually leaving the area. So we did have to place our volunteers and other rescue services at risk to go into that community and make at least 2 flood rescues to get people out. The reason why we do an order is to get you out so that it's safe, because we cannot always promise that we will get back there. And as shown, our resources were quite stretched. So the waters were flooding around the Liverpool area, which had a significant impact on the roads and the traffic. And again, we saw people driving into floodwaters, being stuck in floodwaters, and calling SES and other emergency services to come out and save you from and place you in and put you in a place of safety. So it really stretches our resources. We had over 1,000 volunteers out yesterday, and that will happen again today. We had 47 flood rescue teams out, and we had to call more up from the Illawarra area to respond to those calls for assistance. So again, if you don't have to travel on the roads, please don't do anything but essential travel. It is dangerous. The waters rise very rapidly, as we saw last night, and can put you in danger and require the emergency services agencies to come out and save you. Also, very disappointingly, we had a hoax last night of a person on a roof who was in need of a flood rescue, and it turned out to be a hoax. But what happens is, because it's to try and save a life, we target our resources and try and get out there to save that person, and it means we take them away from other areas. And we really had a lot of calls for assistance last night that were really important. So I call for the community. It was only one matter. Most of the community has been really good, but it just puts our emergency services at risk of not being able to save those who really need it. So it's really important to follow those orders. So our footprint of operations is obviously enlarging based on the forecast of the Bureau. Moving into that Hunter area, we have put additional resources up there. We've also called on additional resources from Victoria, and we're talking to the other states today about what might be needed just over the next couple of days if we need assistance and who's available. And we'll be looking at what the weather brings going up into Newcastle and the mid-north coast. So really very operational again today. Sydney's not out of danger. This is not a time to be complacent. This is a time to continue. What we say is have access to information, know what your risk is, follow the orders or warnings from the New South Wales SES, and take action when it's needed. Again, sometimes the egress routes get cut off and you can't get out, and we try and make sure that we let you know as soon as possible. And obviously last night at McGrath's Hill, during the night, we did have to evacuate a large part of that area because it did become isolated as the waters rose. So really important. It's risky out there. Understand your risk. Have those emergency kits ready to go with your important documents, insurance documents, medications, anything you might need in case we do issue an evacuation order for those areas at risk. The weather will continue for a number of days, so it's still dangerous. As the water goes away, there's possibly a lot of damage to the roads. It will be a while before, for example, the bridges come back out on the Hawkesbury River, and it will take a while, as the Bureau have said, for the water to be able to get away, and the obviously land's very saturated. So it's still dangerous out there. Please take notice of our warnings and stay safe. Thank you.